You've seen the best.
You've seen the worst.
Now here's the rest of both worlds.
I'm GayFesh, and I'll still fill you with crumpets, madam.
And I'm Ari, and make way for Sherlock Holmes.
And today we will be discussing the Star Trek The Next Generation episodes Elementary Dear Data and the Outrageous Okona.
So I'm quarantining, which is annoying.
Dear.
Yeah, I was a close contact, and I have a sore throat. So far, my rapid test says I do not have the COVID, but we don't know, so I'm staying away from everyone in my house. Including my cat, because apparently cats can get COVID.
Yeah, I remember seeing, like, when COVID was first coming around, there was, like, a tiger at a zoo that caught it, and so...
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if it does anything, like, if it makes them sick or makes them die, but why would I want to give my baby boy... COVID. So he keeps not understanding why he can't be in here with me. I'm just hiding out in my bedroom.
I understand. Cats don't get boundaries. My cat Bean, he will follow me into the bathroom regardless of whether I tell him to or not. It's just I'll just be sitting there. Actually, we have an unfinished basement, so where there's pipes going through the wall. At one end of the bathroom, there actually is a hole where Bean can crawl in and out. So I'll just be sitting on the toilet. And he just pops in. And
Bean is the reason that I have Ollie, is because Bean magically adopted you. And then I was like, I want an orange cat like I used to have when I was a kid. And so I started watching For Orange Kittens to adopt.
Yeah, me and my ex, we both had orange cats, and we kept bullying you with orange boy, orange boy, orange boy. And eventually you went and got one.
I did. And his name is Ollie, and he's like 25 pounds. I don't even know how that happened, but the boy loves to eat.
He's huge. He's a chunky boy.
And they made it into our logo for the rest of both worlds because we both love our orange boys so much.
Bean is not a chunky boy. He's very svelte. But what he is fluffy. He just has... It's weird, too, because he's not like a fully long-haired cat. Like, most of his body is pretty normal, but he, especially in the winter, he gets that nice ruff with just the big cheek tufts.
Yeah, the cute little fluffs. Yeah.
His tail is always just like a feather duster. It's just poof, big and fluffy and glorious, and he always sticks it straight up, and it's great.
Bean is exactly what it would be like if my two cats had babies, because I have one like medium long-haired white cat with blue eyes, and then I have my orange boy, short hair boy, and so Bean is like if you mushed my two cats together. Of course, I just refer to Alice, my white cat, as your cat now, because when you came over to visit last time, she picked you.
You warned me. You were like, she hates everyone, so you're probably not going to see her, and she spent the entire time in my lap.
I couldn't believe her. She had to prove that I was a liar. Cats, man.
I know.
So today we are talking about Elementary Dear Data. This is the third episode of the second season. It aired on my 9th birthday, the 5th of December, 1988. It was written by Brian Allen Lane and directed by Rob Bowman.
I love how excited Data is to be playing Holmes in this.
Oh, he is. He's so excited. And it's way better than last time. I didn't even want to punch him in the face once.
Oh, he was being very obnoxious the first one. Like, I still loved it because I was thinking ahead to this episode.
Right.
But, I love how in character... For Data, because he doesn't really have emotions in the same way that humans do, it's rare to see him actually get excited for something. And so it's like, this is his fixation. And so anytime he gets to get into it, he goes all out.
Yeah, I loved it. So let's go over the plot real quick before I start talking about little things.
The Enterprise is waiting around for a rendezvous with another ship, so there's 3 days of downtime. So Geordi and Data schedule some time on the holodeck to play some Sherlock Holmes.
Right, and originally when he installs the program, Data walks in and figures it out immediately because it's based off of his extensive knowledge of Sherlock Holmes.
Right, it's a story that he's already read, so he just skips to the end. Geordi gets mad and is like, look, we spent all this time getting in costume and scheduling time on the holodeck to do this, and you jump to the end, and Data's like, oh, well, should I have just let it play out a little more? He's like, no, I wanted you to actually solve a mystery, but
I wanted to be involved
everything.
Too, buddy. Yeah, It felt like, buddy, this is supposed to be a 2-person game, and you just played it by yourself,
And they're having this conversation in 10 Forward, and Pulaski is one table over, and she's listening. She's like, you're wasting your time, Geordi. Data isn't capable of actually solving a mystery. All he's doing is running off of his memory.
In true Pulaski form.
Yeah, in true Pulaski form, of course. But they make a wager that they can actually do a custom program that would actually challenge Data, and he'd still be able to solve it.
And the line that did that I wrote, oh no, after I wrote this down, was create an adversary capable of defeating Data. And I noticed right away that they used the term Data, not Sherlock Holmes.
And as soon as that line is uttered, it cuts to the bridge, and Worf is like, there's a power surge. Like, the computer was working extra cycles to get that to happen.
There's also no B-plot.
No, this is it. This is the whole thing. I would say the B-plot is, like, Geordi's little model ship, but that was just like a bookend, really.
Right, because it opened the episode and closed the episode, but there was nothing going on with the ship.
Mm-hmm. It was just one of those times, it's downtime, so we get to go have a holodeck episode. And I gotta say, this is, as far as holodeck malfunction episodes go, this is one of my absolute favorites, because it's not just oh no, something happened and the door's locked, and obviously the safety protocols go down. Although, did they go down? We never actually see anyone get hurt.
Think they might have gone down, that the murder protocol or the death protocol or whatever they called it might have been taken off.
They pause it, but they're not sure, and it does make sense that it's not something you'd want to test. Like, at least when the first time it malfunctioned, they didn't know that anything had gone wrong until the guy got shot and was actually bleeding.
Right.
But this time, they probably were remembering that one, and they're like, let's not take the chance. We're having a malfunction. Let's just assume things are dangerous.
We don't want to get Dr. Pulaski killed. She's everybody's favorite.
So what the computer does, because it was given the instruction of creating an adversary capable of defeating Data, is it gives Moriarty self-awareness. He becomes aware that he's in a holodeck. He's able to call the Arch and access ship systems. He is aware that he is a hologram. He's aware that Holmes and Watson are not in fact Holmes and Watson, but are Geordi and Data.
What a great actor too. He was I loved the guy who played Moriarty.
I love him too. He plays it great, and he doesn't play it just like he's, just a straight villain. I mean, he's written as a villain, but because this accident of Geordi's instructions gave him sentience, he starts to grow beyond his original programming. So he holds Pulaski hostage, and like Data and Geordi are going, and like they don't know anything's wrong yet. Once she's been taken hostage, they think, oh, well, it's just part of the program. Let's go and examine the footfalls. And Data is proving Pulaski wrong. He's actually able to deduce and figure out things and track her down.
Yep.
But once Moriarty reveals that he is more than just a holodeck character, Data's like, he tries to shut off the holodeck program because Moriarty draws a picture of the Enterprise and hands it to him.
Right.
But he's not able to because Moriarty has locked out the holodeck controls. So call a senior staff meeting. They're like, we got a hostage situation in the holodeck. We can't shut it down without also killing Pulaski. So what are we gonna do here? And Geordi's just like, I can't believe I just did this. I can't believe but of course Picard's like, look, you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't.
And Picard's like, it's a chance for me to cosplay.
Oh, I know. Like, I love that when they're like, Picard and Worf are like gonna get down there, like they take the time to get in costume, and I'm just, wouldn't you just go? Like, you've got a hostage situation, and Moriarty already knows who are you dressing up for, and Worf doesn't even go
for
in. He just like I know. Oh, and do you notice when Picard like punches out the his top hat? Worf flinches.
Okay, we're gonna talk about that. I have a whole thing. I have the whole point of this episode is Worf's reaction to the pop out hat. Yeah, I know. I love it so much.
But so Picard goes, meets with Moriarty, who has been a very courteous abductor of Pulaski. He's been having just, polite conversation with her and having tea and crumpets and scones. He reveals to Picard he knows who he is. He also has constructed a device that allows him to shake the ship when he pulls a lever, but he's not really doing that to destroy the ship. He's doing it to get Picard's attention, which he has.
Right.
What he wants is a way to get out of the holodeck. And Picard's like, that may not be possible. If you step out those doors, you'll vanish.
After a few seconds, at least.
But eventually, he's able to negotiate with Moriarty. He's like, look, we don't have the technology yet to bring you outside of the holodeck, but we can save your program. And one day, when it is possible to take you out, we'll reactivate you. And because it's clear he has become a sentient being.
And he's coming back. There will be another episode, right?
So let's talk about that. So, funny thing, when they wrote this episode, they assumed that Sherlock Holmes was in the public domain. Now, it is now, but at that point, it in fact had not yet entered it. And the estate of Arthur Conan Doyle contacted them and said, hey, what the hell?
Yeah, they do that a lot. They tried to ruin that Enola Holmes movie too. They're really weird about it.
There's certain things that they still have control over, like certain stories, so certain character elements of certain stories are not in public domain, so they have controls over that. But back then they still had more control. And I don't think they sued, but they did like say, you should have contacted us, and it was just, I don't know who messed up in the writer's room, or somebody should have caught it, somebody should have been checking. Anyway, big snafu. They had always intended to do a sequel to this with Moriarty, and they do get to one.
Yeah.
In season 6. And the reason season 6 is because it took them 5 years to work out the legal difficulties.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we will see a sequel to this one. We do get a return of Moriarty, but it's going to be a while.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I remember hearing, like I said, about that Enola Holmes thing. They didn't think the way that he was presented was in true Sherlock Holmes fashion or something. And it was like, people are allowed to, like, do different takes on characters.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Sorry, if you don't like how somebody writes a character that's in public domain, that's not your place to say. Sorry, he's a public domain character. People get to do what they want with him.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Then, I mean, if they have a problem with Enola Holmes and not those Robert Downey Jr. movies, then their priorities are in the wrong place.
I liked the first RDJ movie. I didn't like the second one. The second one just turned into action schlock. It wasn't really...
I remember not hating the first one, but I watched them in a row. Like, my friend put the second one on as soon as the first one ended.
So they're just all blended together in your mind?
They're all just one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the second one
bad
sucked.
In my head. Yeah.
There was way too much action in it. And, like, sure, Sherlock Holmes is, he's not one to shy away from fisticuffs, but he's still supposed to be an intellectual character. The crux of the stories are supposed to be him using his amazing powers of deduction to figure stuff out, not dodging a machine gun.
Right. And I understood what they were doing, trying to make it like an action movie, but there was too much stupidity and action. Like, I don't understand why people don't make more smart action movies, because those are the ones that everybody always oohs and ahs over.
The action in the first movie with RDJ I thought was really good. Like that boxing scene where he analyzes the entire fight in his mind in slow motion and lays out exactly what every fight's going to do, what every move in the fight's going to be, and then plays it out in the sequence. That's smart action. That is, okay, we're in Sherlock's brain. We see how he does the fight. So that was cool. That's a cool way to do it. But just, I don't know, a machine gun mowing down a train or something like that, that was dumb.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so one of my favorite lines of this entire episode was Chief Engineer LaForge. I just like hearing it. I think it sounds good. I think that he is so good in the role as chief engineer, even if he did massively screw this up on accident.
Actually, one of my favorite lines was in the conference room right after Geordi realizes the command that he had given to the computer that he said capable of defeating Data, cuts to Picard, and Picard goes, merde.
I know. I was so excited he said it again.
He said shit again.
I know. I was like, ooh, yeah, I love when he does that. I was so excited about that too, because it was such a cute response, because it's like, oh man, what are we gonna do in this situation? Because it is a hard situation.
It is an oh shit situation.
It really is, yeah. Do you think that Data writes Sherlock Holmes / fiction?
/fiction? No.
Fan fiction, maybe?
Data is capable of sex, but I don't think that will come up in the next episode. He's not really a sexually minded person, so I don't think that's what he would write. I could definitely see him writing some of his own Sherlock Holmes stories. I think they might be a little tedious. I
can only imagine a Sherlock Holmes story written by Data.
Several seasons down the line, Data writes a poem that is actually a great poem. I love the poem, but it is very Data-ish. And like a lot of people have problem like he does like a reading intent forward and everyone's just like, oh, Data, okay, stop.
There was one point in the opening part before Geordi is disappointed in Data's fantasy that he's like reading out loud from a book, and it was a very Reading Rainbow moment.
Oh no, he wasn't reading. He was writing. He was writing down. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was an actual quote from a Holmes story, but like because he was serving as Watson, and Watson is the narrator of the Holmes stories. So he was.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And it was when Data was playing the violin, and he was describing the violin. Playing of Holmes in that.
And LeVar Burton's British accent was really good. So is this where I find out LeVar Burton is actually British like every other actor?
No, he's American.
Because you, as my friend, know this is a common thing that happens to me. Where I think I know that a person is, American, and then they're Tom Holland, or they're who's the guy from Star Wars that I also was surprised about.
Oh, Finn. Why can't I remember the actor's name? Yeah, I remember you were like surprised that he was British. I'm like, oh no, I've seen interviews with him. He's actually. Andrew Garfield, you didn't know he was British either,
I didn't know he was British either.
So that's two Spider-Men that you didn't know were British.
Two different ones. And it happens to me all the time. I'll text you and I'll be like, this person's British? Like, Superman is British.
Yep.
Anyway,
Superman and Spider-Man right now are trying to be James Bond.
Both of them?
Yeah, I cannot see Tom Holland as James Bond. I am sorry. I could definitely see Henry Cavill James Bond, though. I'd be for that.
I think Henry Cavill would be a great James Bond. He's British, apparently.
But while we're talking about accents, one thing I noticed is Gates McFadden has a mid-Atlantic accent.
Is that what that's called? A mid-Atlantic accent?
Yeah, it's the old-timey style of talking, because the idea was they wanted
that
these
all
films.
Old actresses talked like.
Yeah, like the Katharine Hepburn and that style.
Right.
So they replaced her with Diana Muldaur, who also uses a mid-Atlantic accent. And they're the only characters in Star Trek that I can think of, other than like maybe one-off guest stars, that use mid-Atlantic accents.
Yeah, I can't think of any others, but I had never known that's what it was called, but I've always called it like the old-timey actress accent, so I know exactly what you mean, and I can't think of anybody that I've seen so far.
And the reason it's called a mid-Atlantic accent or a transatlantic accent is because it's supposed to sound halfway between an American and a British accent. The idea was, we're making these movies that should be played throughout the English-speaking world. They kind of, instead of wanting to like have it set in a certain place, they wanted it to just feel more...
that makes sense. But it seems so traditionally American to use that accent at this point.
Yeah, well, because of Hollywood. I mean, that's the classic Hollywood movies. They all use that accent. And I'm pretty sure Gates uses it because her experience was in theater, and Diana Muldaur has been an actor since the 60s, so it was more in vogue to use it back then. I'm trying to think, like, it's interesting to see actors who have been around forever who would use that accent in like early stuff, like Barbra Streisand. My mom was watching Funny Girl the other day, and I noticed that she was using a mid-Atlantic accent in that, but if you hear her now, she just sounds like she's got the New York accent.
Yeah. So she probably, because it was still very popular to do it at the time that Funny Girl would have come out.
It was like early 70s.
Right. And she's grown past it because most people don't use it anymore. So when the villain, quote unquote, is revealed to be Moriarty, I was a little upset by it because it was already a known variable of Sherlock Holmes. I thought it was going to be an alien of some sort. Because it's like, let's do something that isn't part of a Sherlock Holmes story, but Moriarty is definitely part of a Sherlock Holmes story.
Honestly, I don't think enough people are paying attention to how smart the ship's computer is. Because, like, as powerful and as dangerous as Moriarty is, the computer made him.
Yeah. That's true.
And the computer made the decision, well, if I'm going to create a villain in the Sherlock Holmes style to defeat Data, who's playing Sherlock Holmes, I might as well roll it into Moriarty.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe it's more of a smart choice than I realized, because my first thought was, but he's already a known variable, But the computer is wiser than the Oracle of Delphi, so.
It's true. That's what Moriarty said.
When they have the piece of paper that Moriarty hands them and they refuse to show it to the camera, I was like, it's the Enterprise. Yeah. It's obviously the Enterprise. It's gonna be the Enterprise. I was just like, just show me the Enterprise.
I was also noticing when Picard was explaining to Moriarty how the holodeck works and how he's not made of normal matter, but holodeck matter. They've kind of retconned that because in like Voyager and stuff, they say it's just photons and force fields. But here they're saying it is he is made of real matter. It's just an impermanent matter. It's only holodeck matter, so it can only survive.
That is interesting that they would have changed that. Yeah. Well, and he made a comment about the teleporter or transporter too,
right?
Saying something like, "Well, that's a different kind of matter," and like kind of implying that maybe eventually they'd be able to merge the holodeck and the transporter together.
It doesn't make sense to me that anything that you could generate in the holodeck that's made out of real matter would need the holodeck to be on for it to remain, because if you're creating matter, the matter is there. It would take more energy to convert it back into energy, right? It should just,
right,
its default state should just be there. For that reason, I don't think you would use the transporter to create flesh and blood human, or the holodeck to create actual flesh and blood human characters. Those would be force fields and photons, because otherwise it would be unethical to turn them off. You would be killing them.
That is true. That's a good point. I don't remember what the technobabble response that Geordi gave for solving the problem, but it had something to do with beaming something into the holodeck so that it would disperse the holograms. And then they all look at him and they're like, "What about Dr. Pulaski?"
And he's like, "Oh yeah, she died too."
Oh yeah, and it would cut through human flesh as well. I was beside myself. I was like, why is he okay with murdering Pulaski? I mean, I get not liking her, but it was a weird response,
Why did nobody think of beaming her out of there?
Why did no one think of beaming her out of there is the best question I did not think of, because, right, they are able to identify that she is, at one point they're like, "Computer, where is the woman?" And they're like, "Oh, she's here in this holodeck." So they could have just beamed her out into the teleport room, right?
And they could have said something like, something with the holodeck program, we're not able to isolate her from the other programs. They could have just thrown in a line like that to dismiss it, but I don't think it got brought up, and it just occurred to me.
I wonder if it was never thought of because I keep using the word teleport, but it's transporting.
It's fine. You can say teleporter, it's fine.
Okay. Transporting between parts of the Enterprise is not something we normally do, so maybe just nobody thought of it. I don't know.
It's not as commonly used in early seasons as in later, because usually it's you want to teleport something onto the pad or from pad to pad, but site to site is the kind of transporting that you'd be talking about, and that ends up being more of a common thing later. I think really the only time that we saw somebody beam something not to the transporter pad was a couple episodes ago when they had to beam someone directly to sickbay.
Yeah.
It was Tasha, wasn't it? They beamed Tasha directly to sickbay? I think
so. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, so, yeah. And I don't think that I don't think sickbay has its own transporter pad, so I think they just, beamed her onto the floor or something like that. But it's possible. I assume it probably requires double the energy output, because you would need to... You're basically beaming them up and then beaming them back out again.
Right, simultaneously.
You don't have the focal point of the transporter pad to do it.
Okay.
So, yeah, it would probably just require twice the energy, and it's probably a little more risky than just beaming onto the pad.
So after they decide that they're going to cosplay and go in their cosplay, which John Luke is very upset that he was left out of, before we actually see them go in, we get a scene with Moriarty and Pulaski, and she's hanging out, and he's like, "Here, would you like one lump or two?" She doesn't know what that means, which I thought was weird. And then he's like, "Here, have a scone," because I hate that pronunciation of scone. And she says, "Thank you for the tea and crumpets." And then, of course, at the end, he's like, "I'll still stuff you with crumpets." And they call them crumpets for the rest of the episode after they have a discussion about it being a scone. And I was very upset about this. There's a huge difference between scones and crumpets.
I will confess, I don't know what a crumpet is.
So a crumpet is kind of what we call English muffins.
Okay.
It's got those holes in them, but it's more like the Australian toaster biscuits. You remember those from the 90s?
Oh yeah. Those are delicious.
So it's more like those, whereas a scone is like a pastry type thing.
Okay.
I don't know. Some baker is going to take offense to what I just said, but that's the basic difference.
No, that makes sense to me. Yeah, because I've made scones before.
But they're hugely different. Like an English muffin is basically they would be offended. British people would be offended that I said crumpets and English muffins are the same, but they're basically the same. But yes, the Worf hat pop response, I loved it so much. But they're like, let's not wear our uniforms in because that might bring suspicion and it might give him more information than he needs to know. But they had Worf, the alien man, dress up in case he needed to run in there.
Yeah, it's the Enterprise has like a full complement of security officers. They could have had a human one go in.
I know.
Or, maybe they could just program the holodeck so that it stops recognizing aliens as aliens. It just treats people like characters that they're supposed to be playing.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was weird. I was like, you have so many security people. You're going to have this guy rush in there. Don't you think this is going to give Moriarty a bunch of information he doesn't have?
Yeah.
Oh, so I keep thinking about this whole making them into real people, like, making Moriarty into a real person. And basically we just saved him as a backup so that it could be done in the future if it happened, sans the legal problems with using Sherlock Holmes. But look, if they could change holodeck people into real people, Riker would be married to like 7 minuets at this point. I don't think Moriarty's the first person we're going to rush in there and make into a real person.
This is also kind of like a little precursor to a lot of the AI rights episodes that Star Trek gets into.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually... when Moriarty asks about Data and says, "Oh, well, is he a machine or is he something more?" And Picard's like, "No, he's more than just a machine." That actually is the central premise of an episode this season called "The Measure of a Man." We'll get to that pretty soon. But then in Voyager, later seasons of Voyager, the Doctor was very focused on like AI rights. I remember there was an episode where the Doctor had written a holonovel specifically about holographic rights. And
interesting.
He had sent it to publishers in the Alpha Quadrant, but he after getting some feedback from ship crewmates, because they felt like they were being inserted into the program, and they felt like they were being unfairly criticized in the program, he decided he was going to make some revisions, and he sent those revisions over to the publishers, but the publishers were like, "Oh, we already published it." And he's like, "I didn't authorize you to do that." And he's like, "Well, you don't have to. You're not a person."
Oh, okay. So that's interesting. So that this continues on. Yeah, this discussion does. Yeah. The line that Moriarty says that says, "Whatever I was when this began, I have grown. I am understanding more and more," to me felt like a line that was written for us to look at Data and go, well, that's what Data's done. Like whatever he was at the beginning of this show, he's so much more than he was when he first started, And I felt like in its own way, it was supposed to be like a parallel to Data for us to experience in a different kind of like framework. Moriarty in the holodeck. But that line was, I thought, very poignant and very pointed at Data.
Mm-hmm.
I assume this is a very well-liked episode, right?
It's a very popular episode. It's definitely one of my favorites. It's not in my top 3, but it's pretty high up there.
I liked it. I really did. Like, I have in my notes, and I think I said already, Brent Spiner did a much better job of playing Sherlock Data this time than he did last time. Last time, as I said to you in the podcast, can I punch him in the face? I did not enjoy him. But this episode, without a B plot and everything, I still loved. I loved this episode. I also loved that it was a Geordi episode because we're starting to get more of those, which I enjoy. And so, I really liked this one, even if it had a lot of Dr. Pulaski.
Well, that's probably the one saving grace of the next episode. Let's get into that.
Oh, good Lord. Yeah. Okay. So the next episode we're going to talk about is the Outrageous Okona. It is the 4th episode of the 2nd season. It aired on the 12th of December, 1988. It was written by Burton Armus, and the story is by Les Menchan, Lance Dixon, and David Landsberg, directed by Robert Becker.
Armus, first you kill Tasha, now you kill comedy. What the hell?
This was such a weird episode.
It's an incredibly weird episode.
Like, I couldn't stand most of it. I was rolling my eyes the whole dang time.
This episode felt like an episode Data would write to try to understand comedy himself, because none of the jokes are funny.
None of them, especially Guinan's joke, was not funny.
You had Whoopi Goldberg, a seasoned comedian, and like they brought on a holographic comedian played by Joe Piscopo. He's a stand-up comic, and none of his stuff was funny. And Brent Spiner's a very funny person, and
I don't think I laughed once. Like none of it was funny. Yeah. Well, I mean, Jerry Lewis. Who actually thinks Jerry Lewis is funny? Are there people?
They're mostly French, so maybe they did that for Picard. Actually, here's the funny thing: they originally wanted the holographic comic. They wanted Jerry Lewis for that, but he had a scheduling conflict.
Oh, so they went the second best route, an SNL guy that could impersonate him.
Yeah.
Okay, so the plot, that's the B plot, is Data tries to figure out comedy. The main plot is that some Sebastian Stan looking guy shows up. Screws half the Enterprise.
Including Terry Hatcher.
And Terry Hatcher, who's apparently a member of the Enterprise.
Uh-huh.
And, and we didn't talk about it in last episode, but there was an ensign that was the sister from Mad About You. Like, two very famous people were in these 2 episodes.
Huh.
Like, very famous for the 90s. Let me, this is 88,
this is 88.
So they haven't quite gotten there yet. Yeah. But, like... So the plot is he shows up, he screws a couple people, including Terry Hatcher and I think Deanna, and goes.
I think Deanna wanted it, but I don't think they actually.
So when when they're talking on the view screen with several of the people, and they say, well, he comes on the bridge, and they cut to like, and he does his like suave, like, I'm here to be the Han Solo of this episode. Yep. And it cuts to Deanna, and she's like got this smirk on her face. I think they totally did it.
That's possible. Okona reads to me like, do you know what a Mary Sue is? Of course you know what a Mary Sue is.
I do know what a Mary Sue is, yes.
Interestingly...
Should we explain what a Mary Sue is for people who are listening that might not know?
You can explain a Mary Sue, and then I will explain the origin of the Mary Sue.
Okay, so this is going to be bad because I only know like what I've gleaned from picking it up here and there, but a Mary Sue is kind of like a generic character that everything always goes right for them, and there's no reason that they should have their powers or that the things that happen to them should happen to them.
Yeah, and it's usually like an author self-insert, like
Hermione.
So
that's the second time I'm going to bring up Hermione this episode because Okona stole the time turner. Did you see that it looks just like the time turner?
I don't remember what the time turner looks like, but I will
that
take
thing
your word
he stole.
on it.
Yeah, or he didn't steal if you've finished the episode.
The origin of the phrase Mary Sue actually comes from a 1970s Star Trek fanfic.
Oh, really?
In which it was a character, I don't remember her last name, but her name was Mary Sue something. And she was a 15-year-old lieutenant on the Starship Enterprise who was just the bestest officer ever, who just everyone was in love with, including the captain. Really weird that it's 15 years old, but everyone's in love with her. And then, like, I think she ends up, like, dying to save the ship at the end and everyone cries. And it is famously bad, so famously bad that she got a trope named after her.
Wow, yeah.
And then Star Trek just went ahead and made a Gary Stu. Gary Stu is the male version of the Mary Sue for this one. Okona,
for this one, yeah.
He feels like, honestly, he kind of feels like who Gene Roddenberry fancies himself as. Because Gene Roddenberry fucks, like, a lot.
Yeah.
He has had sex with many a person in Hollywood. And so I kind of got like, this is just like the idealized version of who he wants to be, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that this is like everything always goes right, especially at the end when it turns out he didn't actually get the girl pregnant and he didn't actually steal the thing. He's just here to be the suave guy that mansplains everything to everybody.
No, he's just the roguish charmer who seems like he's a bad boy, but actually hasn't done anything wrong. He just, has the little irreverent edge to him, so everyone blames him for things. Now,
good God, yeah.
I'm not going to blame this on the actor. I think the actor, for one thing, I think he's hot. I think he's very cute. I think that beard works for him.
I think he's an attractive dude. I think that's why I keep calling him Sebastian Stan. But, like, It reminded me, have you ever seen Once Upon a Time? The
I
TV
watched
show?
like the first episode and I remember nothing about it.
So Sebastian Stan was in that before he was ever Bucky as the Mad Hatter who lost his daughter, but he's in the real world as just like Sebastian Stan being attractive.
Right.
And that's how I think of Sebastian Stan. And so he reminded me of that particular character, the Mad Hatter character. But it was so like even the piratey shirt, like everything about it was supposed to be, I'm just a roguish, guy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a term for that, and I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's the whole point of that Kubrick movie, Barry Lyndon. Like, there's a term for it, like a puck, a roguish person. I can't think of what it is, but like
scoundrel. Star Wars
they
calls
use
it
the
a
word
scoundrel.
scoundrel in this in this episode, I think. But yeah,
his outfit,
it's Han Solo. It's every
his outfit is literally Han Solo. Like
it's literally Han Solo.
They have like the
sleeves.
brown, black, and white contrast to his outfit. He's supposed to be Han Solo.
The vest.
He's flying a rundown junker of a ship that never works right, and they help him fix it and all that. Yeah, no, he's Han Solo.
So we kind of got off track with the plot, but the plot, I mean, that's it. That's the plot. He shows up, he does some adventures, and
there's like 2 other ships that show up that pose no threats to the Enterprise. They make it painfully clear that these ships only have lasers that wouldn't even penetrate the ship's deflector array.
And they don't care. They're going to die anyway.
They're going to die anyway because for one of them, the guy believes that Okona has impregnated his daughter, and the other believes that Okona has absconded with the royal jewels or something like that.
The Time Turner.
And it turns out that actually he does have the jewel, but he didn't steal it. It was given to him by like the prince of the one of the one ship to be given as like a marriage proposal to the pregnant woman who was impregnated by that prince dude. And Okona was just like, he would be ferrying them back and forth because these are 2 rival planets. They don't like each other very much, but it ends up being like a
Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo and Juliet, except they don't die at the end. It looks like this pregnancy is going to bring the houses together or whatnot. And Okona just gets to sail off and be his roguish self. I thought it was interesting, and like some people might say it was a little cringy how taken Wesley was with Okona.
I didn't think so. I thought it was normal.
I thought it was very normal because I remember being Wesley's age, and I remember knowing people like that who, from a juvenile mind, they're like, oh wow, they're so confident and they're so charming, and I want to be this
like
guy.
that?
I like everything about him. And as an adult, I look at this guy and be like, I don't trust this guy. I know this guy, and stop it.
But that's our adult in us, right? Like, because as a kid, you look at a guy like that, and it looks like he's getting along in his whole life with just like skating by the seat of his pants, and it's kind of cool, and like he seems to be fine. So why can't I be more like him? And everybody likes him, and he gets the girl, and all this kind of stuff. But that's the very first thing I want to talk about now is I did not think the way that Terry Hatcher responded was very Starfleet at all.
I don't think any of the women he was sleeping with acted very Starfleet.
And I kept imagining the whole episode, I wanted Tasha there because Tasha would have thrown him across the friggin' room, He would
have hit on her and he would have broken his wrist and he would have been like, I understand, no hard feelings, I'll just get this patched up.
Yep. He would have been like, all right, you're out of my league. But the fact that as soon as he steps off the transporter, Terry Hatcher's all like, oh, hi. Hello there. She said hello there. I noticed because it's the Obi-Wan line.
She did rebuff him a little bit. Like, he was talking about how she's like, oh, you must have, like, the noblest heritage because of your beauty. And she's like, yeah, I'm sure you meant that to all the other women you said it to.
Okay, so that's true. She did say that.
She said that, and then he's like, yeah, but it's the way I say it, isn't it? And that's when she's listening to him. And that's when, and he does later just walk right into her quarters. But when Worf goes to pick him up, because, the 2 ships have shown up and Picard's like, get this asshole to the bridge. Worf shows up. He's in another officer's quarters. And I'm just thinking, she's a Starfleet officer, and there's the security guy saying, this guy needs to come with. Why is she like, no, I'm still going to smooch him? Like,
no, it was
you're
so
a member
not
of the crew.
Starfleet.
What are
you
you
so
doing?
Badly written. Yeah, it was so badly written because that's not what Starfleet officers would do when she's. And I get that whatever sexist jerk, oh, that's right, it's Armus, wrote this episode, thinks that's how women are, that their sexual drive would drive their ability to be a good Starfleet officer. I was just groaning. I was just upset. I was very upset.
Yeah, she would have been like, I would have written it so, like, you know, obviously he's hot. She wants to have sex. I understand. I kind of want to have sex with him. But if she...
What's that term? Is it himbo? I have never used this term
himbo.
before.
Yeah, he's kind of a himbo. But, like, once Worf walks through, she should have been like, dude, what? You messed up. If Picard's calling for you, you got to get out of here.
Not only is Picard calling for you, the chief of security or whatever his actual title is has come to get you. Time to go, buddy.
Yeah.
You know? Oh, so how about the implication that Data can't have sex?
It wasn't that he can't have sex, it's that he doesn't have a sexual drive. Obviously, he can have sex. He had sex with Tasha. He's fully functional and programmed in multiple techniques. He just doesn't have... He's asexual.
I really wanted him to turn and look at him and say, I'm fully functioning.
Yeah, he's aspec. I mean, asexual people can have sex and can enjoy having sex. They just don't have the drive.
Right. So... I guess we'll go back to the comedy plot because that's where we are in my notes.
Yeah.
So when Guinan says, I've never seen you laugh, I thought, oh God, you don't want to. We saw it once. It was pretty horrifying. Like, please don't make Data laugh. I'm sure that gets better over time. Does he continue to learn to actually laugh at things?
Yeah, actually in Star Trek Generations, the movie, he finally gets his emotion chip installed and he starts laughing at jokes from like 7 years ago.
Okay, so this all felt very familiar. And now that you're saying that makes so much sense because as we all know, I've seen the movies. I just have not seen the show. And I remember there being a lot of focus on Data and his emotions in one of the movies. I just didn't know which one.
Yeah, it was Star Trek Generations. It was the first movie. So, what he's laughing at is like a 7-year-old joke Geordi had told him on the bridge during the Farpoint mission. So it was like an old joke. He was just like catching up on the backlog of jokes he had been told and laughing at them much later. Funny.
I love Guinan's costume design. I meant to bring this up last time we saw her, and I don't think I did, but her costume design is so cool. And her hats remind me of like church lady hats. Yeah, I know. I love them. Like, I love everything about her costume design. But her joke was so bad. I think
you're a droid and I'm annoyed.
Yes. Yeah. So bad because I don't ever find puns funny. Okay, congratulations, you put another word that sounds like that word in the place of the other word. So proud of you.
Hang on, puns are funny, but they're not funny.
Laugh at them.
You're not supposed to laugh at a pun. You're supposed to groan at a pun. Puns are funny mostly for the person telling them. You're telling them specifically to elicit that groan reaction from other people. So it is humor, but it's a very different kind. And so it's not the appropriate joke for her to have told in that moment. The way Whoopi Goldberg played that, I could tell she's a comedian. She knows what's funny. And I know just sitting there, she's just like, how do I sell this? This is so not a funny joke.
It's not funny. And like the look on her face. And then there's a point where he leaves and he comes back and then he gets called away and he's like, I will be back. And she has this look like, my life. Like, that he's gonna come back and tell her more jokes. Like, I kind of felt bad for her, but no, I did not think her joke was funny. Like, nothing in this entire episode was funny. But I have to ask, do you know when Ronald D. Moore started writing for Star Trek? Because for a quick second, while he's flipping through the computer trying to decide what holographic comedian to go see, before he picks Joe Piscopo, and it says, and they just call him the comedian, I think, the whole time. The comic. It says his name is Ronald B. Moore.
Yes.
And I thought that was weird.
Ronald B. Moore is actually a different Ronald Moore who works on Star Trek.
Oh, really?
So those things are usually called Okudagrams, named for Michael Okuda, who was one of the main visual artists on The Next Generation. They're called Okudagrams because he usually likes to hide little Easter eggs and stuff. So usually if you see a list of names, they're mostly going to be names of like producers or just cast members or stuff like that.
Remember when WandaVision did that and threw me for such a loop because all the names of the people were people who worked on the show when they were finding out the names of the people in Westview? Threw me for such a loop. Yeah.
But yeah, so usually if you're seeing a list of names, you're going to be like, okay, that person works on the show. And so it was Ronald B. Moore, who's a different guy, and I don't remember what it is he does. Okay, he's a visual effects supervisor, so he helped assemble this graphic, so that makes sense. He would put himself in there.
Yeah, that would make sense. And then the very first joke that Joe Piscopo makes is transphobic. And I was like, are you kidding me? I was pretty pissed off.
What was the joke? I missed it.
It was some guy, Tip O'Neill.
Oh, Tip O'Neill in a dress. Right.
Yeah. And I was like, have you seen that meme where it's the kid running down the hallway and there's like a ghost chasing him, and it's like me trying to enjoy media from my youth, and then the ghost is labeled transphobia.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that I mean it was not as transphobic as jokes can be, but it was still transphobic enough that I groaned out loud.
It was certainly not Ace Ventura level, we'll say that.
Right, but it still made me go, oh my god, come on guys, you know?
Yeah. Joe Piscopo doing a Jerry Lewis impression was, first off, Jerry Lewis isn't funny, and second off, Joe Piscopo doing the impersonation is not funny either. But there was one funny moment in that, and it's when they've finished acting like Jerry Lewis, and Data asks, so is that supposed to be funny? But he forgets to turn off the voice first, so he starts asking, so is that supposed to be funny? And then he takes out the teeth.
Yeah, that part actually was funny.
I think Data was funnier than Joe Piscopo or Whoopi Goldberg in this episode. Just the unintentional comedy that he did was funnier than either of them. And it's because he's not supposed to be like intentionally funny, and Brent Spiner really knows how to play up the unintentionalness of his character. But Whoopi Goldberg and Joe Piscopo, they're supposed to be funny. They're supposed to know what humor is and understand it. But it was written by somebody who doesn't know or understand humor, so they were kind of left holding the bag.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, apparently Armis is not a funny guy, because nothing in this episode was funny. Like we talked about the Whoopi Goldberg joke, not funny. The Jerry Lewis stuff, not funny. Like, I remember my great grandparents like rewatching stuff in syndication when I was a kid that had like Jerry Lewis, and my grandma would watch Lawrence Welk and stuff. And you just have to sit there and look at it and go, what about this is entertaining? And why is it so entertaining? They're continuing to watch it like 40 years later, you know?
Yeah.
But I have never understood Jerry Lewis. So it was a weird way to go for me, but it felt like maybe they were reaching out to the older audiences of Star Trek. I don't know. I hated it.
Also, I'm reading the Memory Alpha article, and here's an indictment of Joe Piscopo. Apparently, he was allowed to improvise most of his lines.
Oh, no.
So apparently his unfunniness was just on
him. Yeah. They thought, we'll get this SNL guy in. He'll just be funny. Yeah. Nothing about it was funny. And I felt like at the end when they have all of the audience just laughing for no reason, I thought in its own way, it's actually kind of a scathing condemnation of comedy, right? Because you do go to bars and people do, like, there's a joke in The Office that's why bars have a 2-drink minimum, is because that's the only way they're going to laugh at stand-up comedy, right? And like, so it felt like the whole episode was almost a scathing condemnation of comedy if you take yourself outside of it a little bit. But I don't know. I hated it.
Maybe it's that the ship's computer doesn't understand comedy either. And the ship's computer created the comic and the audience. So maybe it was just...
That is true. Because it's a computer. It's a computer trying to teach an android how to be funny. That is very good point, actually. Okay, so now to get into the blatant sexism of the episode. All right, so now we have these two houses, both alike in fair dignity. and they're upset that they believe that the outrageous Okona has screwed their daughter and stolen their jewels. But then here we are, and the dad is explaining, and at first I wrote in my notes, oh, he must have screwed their wives, because we've already heard about how he's screwing his way through the Enterprise. He's been with Terry Hatcher. He got the wink and the smile from Diana. Okay, it wasn't a wink, but I swear to God it was there. And so it's like he's so mad. I thought, oh, he's gonna have screwed his wife. I thought it was gonna be his wife. And I was like, oh, it's one of those old-fashioned, like, let's be mad at the man instead of the woman who cheated on me thing. And I was like, this is so weird. And then, to make it 7,000 times worse, it was the daughter. And I was like, ugh. And then they bring her onto the view screen, and that woman deserves an Emmy because she was exuding the hatred for the way that the men were talking about her the whole time through her eyes, through that view screen and directly into my brain. She was so good at being like irritated as hell the way they were talking about her like she wasn't a real person.
And the show even commented on that because like Deanna talks about how they must have very archaic ideas about paternal responsibility and stuff like that. Like the idea that, oh, well, because obviously these are different cultures. They're aliens, but they look human and whatnot. And she's just like, well, they must have, very archaic views about honor, and they marry her to make an honest woman of her, or stuff like that. And it's just like, she's like, yeah, these are concepts that I don't know, we left in the past. Obviously, in the future, in the Federation, you can just screw whoever you want, and it's fine.
Right. Well, and then there's the line, and this is said by Han Solo himself: "Everyone is talking about me, and no one is talking to me." And then the camera immediately cuts to the pregnant girl. And I was like, okay, so someone who made this episode knows what they're doing a little bit, But like, I felt so bad for her, the way they were talking about her, even when the decision is made at the end that like she can marry
the dude.
Benzoid? What was his name?
I don't remember. The prince dude that was friends with Okona. Right.
That weird looking teenage boy. Like, I don't know. Like, I was so mad at how much she just had to stand there and take it. And she tries to stand up for herself. And she's like, okay, I'm not going to put up with this. No, I'm not marrying anybody. And the way that the episode resolves it is to have Sebastian Stan go over and mansplain to her why she needs to get married to the dude. I don't know. I hated this episode. I hated everything about it. I hated the Jerry Lewis episode. I mean, like, I hated space Africa, racist space Wakanda for reasons, like, actually, but this one I just hate. I just hate it.
It's definitely it's an episode that I watch and I go, who was this for exactly?
Yeah, who was this for? That's a good point, because like last episode we knew who that was for. Like it was for me. It was for GayFesh, and there was like a reason. Most episodes have a reason. This one didn't. The B plot didn't jive with the main plot. The character was like weirdly, like you said, he's a Mary Stu, and like he's probably just what Gene Roddenberry thinks of himself. Like I don't know. Everything about it was like bad, and I never want to watch this one again.
Well, you don't have to. we can just put it in the pile of episodes that we don't like. we don't like. We don't have to consider them again. Fortunately, nothing from this episode has lasting consequences other than that there is a record of Whoopi Goldberg telling awful jokes in the past as well as the present.
Yeah, as well as the present is a good point. I just messaged you yesterday or this morning or something. I said, what a weird time for me to meet Guinan.
Yeah. So we recorded last episode before the View comments had surfaced, where she said that the Holocaust was not about race, and that was like, ew. Now she's been suspended from The View for 2 weeks. So right. I like Whoopi Goldberg as an actress. As a person, her politics and some of her opinions, I don't know. She's I don't watch The View, and
who does watch The View, actually? Like, I don't know who watches that show.
I don't know who it's for either, but not me, that's for sure.
Not me. Yeah, it's just a weird time to like be like, oh, I love Guinan, I love everything about her, and then I turn on the news and I'm like, oh, interesting. It's just a weird juxtaposition.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to never seeing this episode again. And thanks for joining us today. I'm Ari.
And I'm GayFesh.
And until next time,
live long and prosper.
Thanks for watching.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified when new episodes come out.
We're on Twitter at RestBothWorlds.
Join our Patreon at patreon.com/restofbothworlds for bonus content and hear your name at the end of each episode.